welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, The Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, a former D1 hooper and current teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids.
And I'm Omari Sacco for the second, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're always blessed to be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport. Make sure you are listening to Wes and Blake Silverman on The Pin Down over on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel. And no shameless plugs for Omari and I today, because we are joined by one of our favorite guests, somebody that I am proud to call just a friend, not just I say this all the time, not just a friend of the podcast, a friend, which is what's like the coolest part of all of this. 5 years ago, it's like, hey, who do I follow in NBA Twitter land? And it's like, well, Keith Smith is the cap guru. I'm going to follow him. And then you listen to his podcast. And now we talk about our kids and their sports and all of these cool things. So we are joined by Keith Smith of the Front Office Show. Make sure you guys are definitely listening to that with him and Trevor Lane. And of course, all of the stuff he and everybody has going on at Spot Track. We'll mention that multiple times throughout the episode, I'm sure. Keith, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I was thinking about it this morning. I think when I first started coming on with you guys, we were like, all right, who can the Pistons get rid of for draft assets at the trade deadline? And then last year was like, hey, they're kind of fun. You know, should they buy? Should they not? And now here we are with the best record in the Eastern Conference. This is, it's been fun to go on this journey with y'all.
Yeah, it's been fun to have you along to help us understand the nuances of this. I guess you could call it transformation, right? I don't think any of us could have guessed that they'd be where they are now. I guess broadly, what's impressed you most just about how this team has come together? You've seen how rebuilds go. The Pistons is probably a bit unique in some ways. What stood out to you?
Yeah, I think some of it is the way they've stayed the course and kind of done it the way they wanted to. There was not a lot of, all right, this guy's still on his rookie contract, let's move him. They've kind of stuck with their guys and said, hey, we're going to play through and figure things out with these guys here. I thought if we go, it's a year and a half or so ago, but when it was, where are they going in free agency, right? With they added Tobias Harris, and I think we talked about it at the time and said, all right, none of these moves are going to be like, oh my God, jump up and down and scream and yell, but it's like, or at least not in a positive way. But they were like, these are solid value signings that are going to help improve this team. And I took the approach of just help improve the product of the play. I didn't know it would quite help them this much in the standings, and here they are. Really kind of this last year was the fun step to go from a bad team to being a good team, and it looks like we're on our way with the Pistons from going from good team to contender, and that's the harder step, right? Lots of teams go from bad to good. It's going from good to great. That's the harder step, but I think they're set up. They have really good flexibility right now. They have good flexibility into the future. That's got a little bit of a time limit on it because they've got to re-sign a couple guys, but I think they're really in good shape. And then on court, they play so hard every night, right? And I've been saying this about the Celtics too this year. If you show up in the NBA and play really hard every night, you're going to have a chance to win. Because let's face it, not every team does that. Some teams just take the night off and call it what it is and you go. So if you show up and play really hard, like last night, they shouldn't even have been in that game, right? And there they are battling the Clippers. So I know the Clippers aren't great, but they've been playing pretty good ball over the last month or so. And it's just a position where just because they play really, really hard night to night, it's good. And I think they're becoming one of those teams that they're going to beat you up a little bit. You're going to be feeling it the next day when you come into it. And it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, all right, we got to deal with these guys now. And not only is it deal with them, but as long as we execute, we'll beat them. Now it's like, are we going to deal with them? And it might be hard to get the win. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, last night was a great example of that, right? And I think the culture that JB has set, the type of players that Trajan has brought in. Yeah, I mean, that Clippers team was relatively healthy, right? And we saw the John Collins that they thought they were going to get. And that's a team that is, trying to win games right now. So I thought that was a really impressive performance from them. Keith, I don't want to get into the contract stuff yet, right? We're going to talk Daniss Jenkins. We're going to talk Jalen Duren, Jaden Ivey a little bit. We're going to talk the cap sheet and the deadline. I want to continue to set the foundation of that conversation because that's important. And so I want to stay here even before we go broader Eastern Conference. Who's the player that has impressed you the most? You mentioned leaps. Is it Cade Cunningham going from like, yeah, last year was impressive, but now he's like maybe an MVP conversation? Is it Isaiah Stewart? Is it Ron? Is there a certain player that when you watch them, you're like, man, this is better than what I saw last year and really kind of impresses me?
Yeah, I don't want to discount Cade Cunningham because I think far too many people do. I think the way he's discussed is a little weird. Like it feels like he still isn't getting the credit for how good of a player he is, especially as a player who really everything orbits around him with the Pistons, especially on the offensive end. He's a better defensive player than I thought he ever would be. And a lot of that is just, again, he's got great size. So as long as you play hard, you should be a good defender. But I'll go back to, I saw this kid play in high school and I knew he was really, really good. And I knew he was going to be great. So that
real quick, Heath, for those that don't know, Cade played at Montverde. You're down there in the area. So you see a lot of these the Cooper Flags, the Derek Queens, the Asa Newells, et cetera. You see them come up through Montverde.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've gotten to see a lot of these kids play when they were 16, 17 years old. So I was confident in him. The guy for me is Jalen Duren. I have been really impressed with Jalen Duren. And I started to see some of this 2 years ago when the Pistons were still really bad. There were times with Jalen Duren where it's like, okay, he made the right read in pick and roll coverage. He didn't just trail the ball handler and all the way to the rim and let the guy score or leave an open passing lane. He kind of hedged hard and then he recovered. You could see he was starting to put it together. I think Jalen Duren came in super raw and just didn't really know what he was doing. Everything was on instinct and you could see it. And then last year, I thought he took meaningful steps forward. I think now we're in a position where Detroit gets a lot out of him as I don't want to say a facilitator because then people are like, well, isn't it like Jokic a facilitator, which is like a whole different planet? But Detroit can run stuff with Jalen Duren that now they can have full call. And it's not flashes. It's just, he does it now, right? He's become a pretty good short roll passer. He's a pretty good decision maker, really, really good finisher on the offensive end. I think we can rule out he's never going to be a shooter, right? I think that's off the table at this point, unless it's a complete mid-career transformation like Brook Lopez, but he doesn't need to be. He's really good 10 feet in. And then I think defensively, I think he's improved enough where it's no longer like, all right, well, we got to kind of make sure someone's always shading and help for him or whatever. I think he does some good stuff. And then rebounding the ball, I mean, he's just a beast on the boards. He just gets after it and he's really physical, but I think he's learned how to be physical in the right ways. So he's the guy who I think has stepped up. And I think his play has been what's lifted Detroit to a different level of where they were even from a year ago. Not that Cade Cunningham's not awesome, because he is, but I think it's been Jalen Duren's play that's kind of gone up a different level.
Oh, too, real fast. Clark Love says, hello, guys. Love your podcast. It's the best Pistons podcast, and I'm watching it live all the way from India. And O2, Clark just goes ahead and lets you know it's 8:30 p.m. in India, so we don't have to go through our geography lesson on that. So thank you. So Keith, the joke is that I think it started with Brazil, but our listeners know, just let us know what time it is so we don't spend 5 minutes of the podcast trying to figure out where this country is at and what the time change is and all of that. So go ahead, O2. Keep us rolling here.
Yeah, I wouldn't have gotten 8:30 p.m. With
I would not have, in fairness to you, O2, I would not have got that either.
Keith K, obviously playing at an MVP level right now. Duren, flirting with his first All-Star appearance. Of the other young guys, who else has stood out and impressed you, especially over the last year as they've made this transformation?
Ron Holland, I think, has just been really good. I mentioned it multiple times a year ago. I thought they did a great job with him last year of just making sure he played every night. Every night that he was available, he got his minutes. And it wasn't, we're going to force feed him 30 minutes. It wasn't, we're only going to play him 5. It was, he's going to get his 15, 20 minutes a night and just ask him to kind of do your thing. And I think, again, I don't want to be a broken record with this, but it's a good example of if you just play hard, like this is what will happen. So I think he's been, a really good example of playing hard. Now, I love with him and Isaiah Stewart that they're going to knock you down and then they're going to laugh at you, right? Like it's not even dirty play. It's just hard physical play. And they're just going to really kind of, they're going to let you know. And if you complain, then they get even more excited because now it's like, now we got you, right? Like we're in your head a little bit. And I love that, with him. I think, he's just a really good player. I also think not a young player. I think they've done a really good job with Duncan Robinson, kind of getting him back to being a valuable player by this year, because we're teetering at the end of his Heat tenure where it was like, all right, where's he going to be? He'll still be in the league because he's an elite shooter, but like, where are we going to go? And the fact that they've put together such a good defense with Duncan Robinson playing such a big role is really good. So I think they've done a really nice job with him too. S.R. Thompson, I would have mentioned, but like, I think everybody knows, like, he's spawn. He's exciting. He's one of my favorite defensive players in the league. I think his brother gets all the love and praise because of, he makes so many highlight defensive plays, but I think just solid night to night, play to play defense. I think Asar is right there with his brother, and with most of the top wing perimeter defenders in the NBA. He's just a really, really special player.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where voters end up. I mean, we're a long way away from it, but Detroit is going to have at least one all-defensive player between Asar and Stu because they're the second best defense in the NBA. I'm interested to see how they rank those two guys. We've had our own issues on the Pistons Pulse, like deciding which one is more valuable defensively. Obviously, minutes can come into play and position and all of that. And not, that's not a conversation for right now, but just as you bring that up, I think he's in that conversation for all defense. Let's start to broaden this just a little bit, Keith, because again, I think this is important context to lay the foundation of the trade deadline picture for Detroit and really the East in general. So just I'm not going to ask you to rank the Eastern Conference. Like, I don't want to do that, but what are your tiers? What do you think my view is this is a very open conference, but it's going to be a very competitive conference. Like, matchups make fights, right? Like, Boston provides them some issues because of the 3-point shooting and not turning it over and offensive rebounding that Detroit usually thrives on against teams. And then there's other teams they're going to perform well against. So what's just kind of your overview of the Eastern Conference and where Detroit sits in it?
Yeah, he came into the year with the Knicks and the Cavs in their own tier at the top of the conference. And despite really uneven play from the Cavs, I still believe in those two teams. I think they're both going to be really good, but I have Detroit right there with them now. They have played their way into that throughout the course of this year, rather than being in that group of, my next group was a whole bunch of teams, because I kind of was like, I don't know, to tell me who's going to be healthiest, and I'll tell you at the end of the year what order to put them in. And I, in some ways, still kind of feel that way. But I think it is with those guys, I think Detroit is right there with the Knicks and the Pistons now. And I think in some ways, they have I'm not trying to advance the conversation quicker here, but they have room to improve with outside additions that the Knicks and the Cavs just don't have. For them to make major additions, they'll have to subtract to add other guys, where Detroit can kind of just go add. It's not quite that easy. I'm sure we'll get deeper into that, but they're in a spot where I think they're really good. Then behind them, you've got the Celtics, I think, have played really well. We'll see what happens with Jason Tatum. By all accounts, he's going to play at some point this year, and I'll add the standard disclaimer. It will not be before he's ready. It will not be any kind of rush. He will play when the Celtics agree with him and the medical staff that he's ready. I've been saying he won't be 100%. He'll be 110%, 120%. There will be, hey, I'm ready to go. And it'll be, all right, let's give it 2 more weeks. And then we'll really kind of see where it is. But by all accounts, he's coming on. They've got moves that they could maybe make to kind of rebalance and reorient the team a little bit. So they played really well. So the conference has been better as far as, I think, those middle class teams. Orlando, they've just had so many injuries, but there's just a ton of talent there. We'll see if Atlanta can take off a little bit more.
Toronto's been solid.
Who's that?
Toronto?
Yeah, Toronto. Yeah, again, Toronto, another team. Just they play hard every night, right? And if you play hard, you're going to win games. So I think those guys are in a good place. So I think they're in a good spot where, though, the conference is there for the taking. Right? Like, no one has run away with this. No one feels like they're an overwhelming favorite. So I think, Detroit should be in a position where you don't need to go all in and trade everything and make here's multiple picks going out and 2-3 young guys because we're trying to load up. But I think if you can get into a place where it is, let's find another guy or two to help kind of round out our rotation a little bit, why not go for it? Because when you're close, you don't know. I mean, you never know what next year will be, right? So if you're close this year, you might as well make a run.
Devon said, shout out from Houston. Y'all know what the time is here. 02.
9:30 or 9:18. That's Central Time. That's easy.
All right. There you go. Very well done, O2.
I travel the United States. That's when we get across the Atlantic and Pacific that it gets a little fuzzy, but Houston is easy. Come on now.
Equator or ocean, then things get a little tough.
It gets fuzzy then. Yeah.
I think that's more than fair, O2. I think that's more than fair.
It's past England for me because I only know England from watching the Premier League in the mornings. I know they're 5 hours different, but they change their clocks like 2 hours or 2 weeks different from us. So there's like periods where they're not, where they're a little longer, but it's that's the only one I know for sure. Once you get past there, good luck. Like, and if it's split time zones like we have here in the States, like I know our country, but anywhere else, get out of here. I don't know.
It's funny because obviously I have Keith's notifications on for Twitter, and then every once in a while there's a tweet where I was like, hell is he talking about? Like, I don't know what I don't know what this team is or who that player. And then I realized that it's something like that. Real quick, O2, before your next one, Fly Monks 321. Did Keith talk about the trade exception options yet? Not yet, guys. We have not got into the actual trade deadline conversation. We're kind of laying the foundation for all of that, just in terms of what this Pistons season has been, what the Eastern Conference landscape is. We will get into that here very shortly. But if you want all of that, you'll have to go back a little bit, O2.
Yeah, no, for sure. Before we get deeper into the trade deadline discussion, Keith, can you kind of walk us through the Daniss Jenkins two-way situation? I think people kind of generally understand he has a certain limit on the amount of games he could play. But what's the situation the Pistons are facing as far as getting him on a standard deal?
Yeah, so I pulled it this morning just to make sure I had the updated numbers as of because what a weird break, right? It's like a
4 days off now.
Break? Right now for the Pistons, like 4 days off?
I think it's 4, right? O2? Yeah,
that's
kind
great.
of bizarre for January.
I looked and I was like, is it something wrong I think I checked the schedule on ESPN and I was like, they must be missing a game in here. Feels like when it's the NBA Cup, right? We're waiting for him to fill in a couple games. But all right, so he's been active for 38 games. Here's the thing that people miss with this. It is not games played for two-way players. It is games active. I want to say he's probably played in just about every game.
He's been active for every game.
What did you say the active was, Keith?
38 games.
He's played 31 games.
Okay. So that's where, because I still get people like, are you sure? Because I only have, and it's come up with a handful of guys that are pushing up there with this, but it's games active. So he has 12 active games left that he can play. Once, and people ask what happens when they run out. When they run out, he's still on the roster. He stays on the roster. He just can't play in any more NBA games. Can't be active for any more NBA games. Still play in the G League if you want, once you exhaust that eligibility. But in order for him to play more, which means, or even just be active, you would need to convert him. Now, here's the interesting thing, that 12 games takes us right to trade deadline day. The 12th game would be on trade deadline day. So for Detroit, in order to convert Daniss Jenkins, one, you need a roster spot. You can't just convert a guy. There was, I would say, a fairly strong belief that Isaac Jones was going to get waived before his contract guaranteed last week on the 7th. But the reality was, for Detroit, they're miles under the luxury tax. So I think for them it was, hey, let's keep Isaac Jones, especially in a period of time where we could use an extra front court player just in case. And I realized people have said like, hey, Tolu Smith is playing over him and he's a two-way guy. I get it, but you just want to have the guy just in case. And they know, hey, if we need to waive him and eat the full contract, whatever. But it's also, I believe he's $1.9 million. It's $1.9 million you could throw into a trade as well. So we're in a spot with the Pistons where that's not going to make a difference that they don't have the roster spot. They'll create one. But remember what I said, it takes us to trade deadline day. So what they could do is they could always create a roster spot through a trade, an unbalanced trade where they send out 2 guys, bring back 1, 3 for 2, whatever it may be. And that could be the way they get to the roster spot there. So I think, although it looks like it's getting scary, right? Because it's like, oh my gosh, there are only 12 games left and this guy has been really good for us, has been a key rotation player. It's okay. Like they've managed this really, really well. They're going to be in a good spot with this. So I think they're really in a place where it becomes, all right, let's get get to the trade deadline and then we'll decide. We'll figure it out. Daniss Jenkins will get converted. There's no doubt in my mind. Now, the question will be, does he get straight converted for the rest of this year? Detroit can make him a restricted free agent in the summer. Or do the Pistons give him a prorated veteran minimum contract and then tack an extra year with a team option onto it, which would get him basically the same amount of money, but it gives the Pistons a little bit more flexibility because if they wanted to keep him on that contract for next year, they could. Or do they go in the road where, hey, we want to make you a restricted free agent in the summertime because we want to be able to do a longer contract? Because after this season, they'll have early bird rights for Daniss Jenkins. I love what Daniss Jenkins has done, but early bird rights are more than satisfactory to sign him to a long-term contract. It's got to be at least a 2-year deal, but you could go as many as 4. And it's a little weird the way it works. It's the average player salary that it works off of. So just like it's about the mid-level exception. That's kind of the easiest way to keep it there where they could do that. So I think that's where they're in a spot where they've got great flexibility here. And it'll probably be a matter of, do Daniss Jenkins and his representation want to assure we're getting a new contract this summer? Or are they a little more open to, all right, if we're on a minimum again for the 26-27 season, it's not the end of the world. But his days on a 2-way contract are numbered, and they're probably numbered to 12. Exactly. More games. And then we'll see him on a regular deal.
2 quick questions before we go to break. And you may have answered the first one. 2-way players are not eligible to play in the playoffs, correct?
Postseason, yeah. Pistons don't have to worry. They're not going to be a play-in team, but they're not eligible for I always make that clarification.
That way people don't think they can play in a play-in game. Okay, so we all know where this is going. I just wanted to clarify that for people in general. Like, second thing, because I can see people asking this, Detroit does not have the option to just say, hey, Daniss, we will offer you 2 for 12 right now. That is not something they could do. And is that only because they don't have cap space? Like, could the Brooklyn Nets do this with one of their 2-way players because they have cap space?
Yeah, the Nets could use cap space. The one thing the Pistons have that they could use is the biannual exception, but that's only good for a two-year contract. So it doesn't even get you all that much, really. And I think the challenge is the Pistons don't project to be a cap space team anytime soon, unless something really weird happens this offseason that we're not expecting. So I think they're in a spot where they would like to retain next year's biannual, because if you use it this year, even if you only used a chunk of it, you lose it for next season. And you only really will do that. Like for example, the Utah Jazz used their biannual exception this year to bring in I can't remember who it was off the top of my head, but bring in a player via trade. I think it was Kevin Love, because the Jazz are going to be a cap space team next summer, and you lose the biannual if you're a cap space team. So they don't have any worries using it this year. A couple other teams used it because it's, let's get a guy because we're really trying to load up to make a run. You don't generally see something like that happen. You would have to have an exception or cap space to give Daniss Jenkins more money. So that's where it gets a little tricky with that one. So yeah, I think we're in a spot with the Pistons where it's probably more likely to be a minimum deal. The question is it a 1-year prorated rest of the season minimum, or is this going to be a 2-year minimum for the rest of this year with an additional minimum year tacked on? And a lot of that comes down to just what his reps will agree to. Detroit would love that because that gives it there. I will add this too. Even if they do a rest of this year and next year, and then they bring him back on the minimum next year, they can still make him a restricted free agent in 2027 because he'll only have 3 years of service. And any players with 3 years of service or less are eligible for restricted free agency with very, very minor exceptions that don't apply to Daniss Jenkins.
Okay, let's go to break. 0-2, when we come back, let's talk JD and JI contracts just real quick. Whatever Keith has on that, what he's thinking with their extension situations in the offseason, and then we will dive headfirst into the trade deadline after that.
All right, we are back with segment 2. We're going to dive into trade deadline stuff here soon. Keith, can you just give us a general breakdown of just kind of what the Pistons are working with from an asset standpoint? Obviously, they have that trade exception. And then, just from a financial standpoint as well, how much headroom they have.
Yeah, you spent a little bit of time with that trade exception this week. I saw. I read.
I did.
Well done on that. So,
Appreciate
yeah,
that.
with the Pistons, they've got that $14 million trade except 14.1 and change trade exception. So that's a pretty good size trade exception. It's the equivalent to the non-taxpayer amount. So for any other, they're not necessarily going to be beat out trade exception wise by more than a handful of teams that have a much larger one than that. But they're in a really good place with that where they've got that. They have all of their own draft picks. No longer that forever protected pick finally went to the Knicks and it's done. So they've got all their own first rounders. They've got a couple extra seconds to work with. So they're in pretty good shape there. So those are just nice to have, is just that extra sweetener in a deal, little capital to kind of move in there. And then I think one of the key parts is for the Pistons, I have them a little over 19 million away from the luxury tax. They're miles from the first apron and second apron. That's not even a conversation. They would struggle to even put themselves in a position. But just for example, let's say a player makes a non-taxpayer mid-level, lands in the Pistons' lap where it's, hey, we want to send him into that trade exception that you have. And they say, all right, we're going to waive a player just to create the roster spot. They could use that trade exception and still have $5 million in clearance under the luxury tax. Like, they are really, really good shape with all that stuff. Where a couple other teams, whether it's a hard cap at the apron or the second apron, they've got problems. That's kind of where the Knicks are. The Cavs are a second apron team. It was very hard for them to do anything. Handful of other teams are, we only get a little bit of room under the luxury tax to do something. Detroit has incredible flexibility going into the trade deadline.
All right, real quick clarification here. So FlyMonk321, with the trade exception, we can't send out any salary, so we have to clear 2 roster spots to use it and elevate Daniss. So maybe just walk us through. I think he's asking the question here, or at least asking for clarification. So walk us through how a trade exception is used. Can you send out salary? Can you aggregate it with another contract? Like, can they take Tobias Harris $26 million and this trade exception and go get a $40 million player? Just walk us through the mechanisms of how it can be used and how it can't be used, so everybody and also I think the other clarification is something can be reported as one trade, and then I've learned this from the front office show, you can execute it in a way that is actually 2 trades, essentially, right? So walk us through all of that very, very finite details of this.
Yeah, trade exception. Here's the big thing that I try to make it very simple for people. It is a mechanism to bring in salary. It is not a mechanism for outgoing. So when I say that, I'm glad you used Tobias Harris. So Pistons cannot take Tobias Harris plus the trade exception, put it together and go get a $40 million player. Can't combine the trade exception with any outgoing salary. You also can't combine it with any other exceptions that you may have. The Pistons only have the one, but let's say they also had a $10 million trade exception. You can't put them together and go get a $24 million player. Not allowed to do that. So they're in a position where it needs to be used by itself. Player's salary needs to fit within the trade exception amount with a little bit of wiggle room, because there's a little bit of plus to just grease the trade to go through. But here's where it's important. Let's say they're in a position where, I'm making it up, but Tobias Harris and another player going out and they're bringing back money. And it's like, all right, well, Tobias Harris plus this guy was a little bit more than, the 2 players we're trying to bring back don't necessarily fit. Well, what you do is, as long as one of them fits inside the trade exception, they come in through the trade exception, and then the other guy comes in as the matching salary from the players who are outgoing. And that's where it's important. So what they could do is, like Tobias Harris in the trade exception for a $20 million player and a $10 million player. Harris may match on that. I'm not going to do the math on the fly like that, but just, you could do that because one matches to Harris, one comes in via the trade exception. And to your point, Bryce, that's where what the NBA allows teams to do is you can construct the trade in whatever the most beneficial way is for you on your side of the trade, as long as it works. So where Tobias Harris going in for one team might be one trade if he was the matching salary. On the other side, the Pistons could break it into effectively 2 separate trades, where it's bringing one guy into the exception, one guy in here. 99.9% of people only care about what Shams is going to tweet, that it's player X for player Y, and off we go. But the mechanics of this do matter a little bit because it's just, it's a way. So it's just more flexibility for them to be in a position where it is like they can play a little bit more with this. It's almost like having $14 million in cap space, if you will. Now, one disclaimer with that, it's not $14 million in cap space because you could add cap space to outgoing salary and you could sign a player, but it isn't. One thing it is useful for, though, let's say a player gets waived in the buyout market who makes $14 million, Pistons can claim that player if they wanted to without even having to go to the buyout situation. They could just claim that player because it is you can use a trade exception to claim players as well. So that's just a handy little thing to have as well.
Mr. Ray says, can't believe I missed 30 minutes of greatness, but let's go. You can always go back and watch. So Chuck, real quick, 2 quick qualifiers and then O2, we'll get to your question. Chuck says, so each team could technically have a different trade from the books wise.
Yeah. It's as long as it's legal on either side, how they structure it is really up to them. And it all has to get discussed on the trade call so that the league can process and see. This is a very regular thing. And when trades, for me, unfortunately, the Trae Young, CJ McCollum, Corey Kispert trade wasn't more complicated because I would have liked to have had more things to break down. I like when they're a complicated trade, but there's not. You'll see people like me or Yossi Goslin or Bobby Marks will step up on social media and we'll just kind of, say, in the range of, all right, so here's what's happening here. Here's what they're going to do. And we'll kind of break it down on this is how this works. And Bobby does a cool thing where he does it on a whiteboard and then he'll actually like map out the math. And then he'll usually post that on YouTube, but it just kind of explains it. So that's where, we'll sit down, figure it out. And sometimes there are ways where teams could create a trade exception, but sometimes they simply choose not to. And there might be, we know we're going to lose it in the summer because we're going to be over the cap or under the cap anyway. So it doesn't really matter. But yeah, with that. So that's kind of where we're at with the way teams can structure these trades.
And that's an important clarification as well. You only get them for 12 months. As most Pistons know, this is from the Dennis Schroeder to Sacramento. And why that got hung up in Detroit, I think sent some sort of protected second round pick or whatever it was to create this. And that's why they have it. So
and it expires in July.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. It's not the deadline. It's the summer. So YouTube user said you can send Sasser for Hauser using the TPE.
Yeah. That's a great example of one where, right. Marcus Sasser alone doesn't match salary for Sam Hauser, but Marcus Sasser would go to Boston. That's what Boston would actually create a trade exception because on their side, they're trading Hauser for Sasser, which is less money. That's how trade exceptions are created. Anytime one player goes and you take back less, the difference is created in trade exception. Trae Young actually made about $1.3 million more than McCollum and Kispert. So the Hawks created a $1.3 million trade exception. But on the Pistons side of this trade, even though Sasser doesn't match, they're not using Sasser as the salary match. The Pistons would also create a small trade exception for Marcus Sasser because they're technically sending him for no money back because Hauser's coming in via the trade exception. So it gets super complicated, but that's how trade exceptions can work. I'll say this too, because I get this every time I tweet that one's been created. Some random dude, Joe Bunch of Numbers replies on Twitter, who cares? These things never get used. And it's absolutely not true. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes giant ones get created and never get used, but trade exceptions get used more often than people think.
And if Hauser wouldn't take up the full 14, so Detroit would keep the extra 4 million or whatever, right?
Yep, absolutely, okay. Yeah. Yep.
Last one, and then we can move on. Big Dog Pistons. If CJ is bought out, can the Pistons offer him the 14 million? This is where your clarification of this is not cap space. This is not like the biannual. Like to your point, those exceptions can now be used as trade exceptions, but that's new. Those are used for bringing in cap space, used as cap space. A actual true trade exception cannot be.
Yeah, a true trade exception is it's got to be used by a trade or a waiver claim. And even in the case of CJ McCollum, let's say he's not going to, but let's just say he woke up, felt very charitable and said, hey, Atlanta, you can have 25 million back and I'll only take, $5 million. the Pistons couldn't claim him for $5 million. You claim the full value of the contract. So the only team that would have, $5 million in dead money on their books would be the Hawks in this case. You can't do that. So that's kind of how that all works. It gets very complicated, but but trade exceptions for trades or waiver claims, not signings.
Thank you for that very thorough explainer. Going back to a point you made earlier, Keith, you mentioned the Eastern Conference is wide open. Pistons obviously have a 3 or 4 game lead for that number 1 spot, but they sort of have this window now where you're talented, you're flexible, and there's just potentially a conference finals appearance just waiting to be taken. For you, what level of swing feels necessary to you? If they just went trade exception, we're going to add, say Sam Hauser or whoever and add some more shooting just to support the guys, or would it be more on the level of a Michael Porter Jr. or maybe even beyond that? Sort of where do you fall on that?
Yeah, I said this on Twitter the other day, because you guys know how it is. You tweet about one thing and then the next thing you know, you're involved in a 3-hour long discussion, right? Which is good when people are respectful, even if you disagree, it's great, right? That's how it should work. And there are times when people have made me think differently on things. One thing I tweeted though, and I left kind of the whole idea of cause it seems to me, and I'm sure you guys are close, well, I know you're far closer to it and you get a lot more of it than I do, is we're not getting anything from Harrison LeVert, just trade him anyway, who cares, go get any number of players that those two guys equal. One thing I say is, well, one, you're kind of selling guys a little short there, and two is you don't be very wary of upsetting a happy, productive ecosystem. Because if you do that, you then run the risk of, now you've kind of put yourself in a position where, well, wait a minute, Tobias Harris, who is cool being the 3rd, 4th option and taking shots when the ball comes his way, if you moved him out for Michael Porter Jr., you better feel really confident. Michael Porter Jr. is not going to be, well, on the Nets, I have the ball all the time and I can do whatever I want to do. He's got to be able to slot in with Detroit as, I'm going to be the second guy. That isn't a great example because Michael Porter Jr.'s formative years in the NBA were spent playing off Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. So not exactly a great, comp there, because I think he would. Or is Porter Jr. really and I kind of like this. I like having it. I will say this. I don't like when people say, who cares about Michael Porter Jr.? Those are good stats on a bad team, but he's not an inefficient chucker. When a guy's averaging 25 points and shooting 38% from the field, then I'm a little more like, all right, how much we buying this? I mean, he's having an insanely, efficient season. It's the NBA roster building is not just, this is not a fantasy team where you're just trying to collect talent. You're trying to collect stats. This great comment. Yeah, you have to be able to do this. This is why I always say, and I'm going to plug our trade machine on Spot Track, because I think it's the best one, is just because a trade works in the trade machine doesn't mean a trade works, right? It has to be workable.
Can you put that AI in there, Keith? And
I wish.
Where it spits at you like they would never do that. Like the comments right now are like, Tobias, if you guys think Tobias and LeVert aren't any good, then why would another team think they're good? And
that's the other thing, and this is, I'm going to pick on my buddy Trevor Lane's fan base here with Laker fans, where they're like, amazing. These guys are trash. Trade them for this superstar. Why? What are we doing? That doesn't make sense, right? That's where it's the whole trade Dalton Connect, Maxi Kleba, and Gabe Vincent. There we go. There's $30 million in expiring money. Go get a star. Why? You hate them. Why would anybody else want them? Now I'll actually answer your question, Omari, because you asked a nice question that I didn't answer even remotely. But I'm going to answer it by not answering it where they could do a small move, and I think I'd be okay with it. I don't want them to just sit it out. Do something. You have the trade exception. You've got all your draft picks. You've got a couple contracts that you probably could move. It doesn't have to be do something just to do, but do something productive. Add another shooter. Add another ball handler who can ease the burden on Cade Cunningham. Add one more playmaker if you can. It doesn't have to be a massive swing. If a big swing is there, I have no problem if they take it because they're close. The conference is there for the taking. And we all saw it last year. If you get yourself into the NBA Finals, You're in the finals. You have a chance to win it. I don't care how big of a mismatch people talk about. People are saying the Thunder were going to sweep and win every game by 30. If Tyrese Halliburton doesn't get hurt, maybe the Pacers are the champs. So if they want to make the move, if they want to make a Michael Porter Jr. move, or if they're like, you know what, let's really try to bowl over the Pelicans with multiple picks offers for Trey Murphy. All right, sure, because I think that would work. You know, I think they'd be in a place to I think those could be workable trades, but don't start looking at, oh man, this guy's awesome, and think like, there it is, get that deal done. Because that may not be the best kind of deal for the Pistons, where it's just, you know, you got to be careful that you don't upset a team that's playing really, really well right now.
Okay, we're going to go to break. When we come back, I want to stay on that topic, Keith. We have a couple questions talking about, essentially it's asking about the culture of the Pistons right now, and then also kind of a general question, I think kind of steered towards Michael Porter Jr., but I think they're fun, just general questions. So O2, we're going to get to a couple of those right after this.
All right, Keith, we are back with segment 3, and we have a question here from Order of the Blazing Chorus. Shout out to Order of the Blazing Chorus, always extremely tapped in. Does the productive depth of the Pistons suggest that if they make a move, this coaching staff and team have a good shot of getting a new acquisition to buy in 100%?
Yeah, that is a fantastic screen name too.
They do a podcast. This is the name of they do an awesome, they brought me on, Keith, and we sorted the Pistons players into the Harry Potter sorting, into
nice.
the houses.
Nice.
They talk hoops though, for real. They're just very creative, much more creative than the Pistons Pulse with the way they talk Detroit Pistons basketball.
I love it. Yeah, I think so. I think there's definitely something about that, right? This is, I know, you know, when you guys are around coaches and teams and front offices, like culture is something people say, and some people love to talk about culture. And then other people are like, culture is what happens when you're good. like if you're bad, show me the bad team with good culture. Like it's not a thing. That said, I do think the Pistons have been building something, right? Like if you show up there and you don't play hard, even if they trade away a couple guys, there's going to be enough players left that are like, hey, this doesn't fly here, right? They're going to hold guys accountable. I think JB Bickerstaff will hold guys accountable to that. I think, you know, Trajan Langdon, this is where it helps that he was a longtime player too. Because I think he could talk player to player with guys where some of the front office people who weren't players can't have that same kind of conversation with them. So I think they're in a spot where it is, you know, hey, let's get it. You know, yeah, you better buy. Will they? Who knows, right? That's always the gamble you make when you make a trade. But I think they're going to do what they can to make sure that they do. But this is where it's also, these are the things that get missed. And even I miss them sometimes too, is big part of your scouting is the player and their personality, not just their fit on court, not just their contract on the cap sheet. It is this guy going to show up and work? Is this guy going to come into the locker room with his 20-person entourage and it's going to cause an issue for the rest of our guys? Do we want this guy around our other young players who are going to be, oh, hey, if he can do that, I can do that too. And that's the stuff that teams spend a lot of time on, that I think sometimes we overlook a little bit.
I mean, Keith, it's a huge part of what you and I love to do, which is NBA draft scouting. And I tell people all the time, listen, I can evaluate what I'm watching on my screen in Southwest Kansas, but there's a whole other portion to Caleb Wilson, to Darren Peterson, to every other player that I just simply do not know that is going to determine whether that guy is successful or not.
Part of that is, especially in the draft process, is getting in the gym and practices. How do they treat the managers? How do they treat the assistant coaches? How do they act? I know a lot of people who are like, they like getting in the gym the day after they had a bad game because how are they acting then? Right? Like, are they ready to work? Are they being a jerk? Are they just, too happy-go-lucky where it's like, who cares? Those are all the things. And you talk to, information is the name of the game in scouting. And it's as big a part, maybe even more as, it's multiple things where it's on-court production and play. It's injury history and potential future injury management and those things, as well as, the personality type stuff. And when guys go in deep on these prospects, they spend a lot of time talking to everybody. But the same thing happens in the NBA. It'll be, hey, let's talk to the trainers. Let's talk to the coaches. Let's talk to the other people. If you go to an NBA game and you're lucky enough to get in really early, you'll see the other team scouts are in there watching the guy, right, the stay ready guys who might go through a full 3-on-3, 100% full speed workout pregame because they know they're probably not going to play that night. That's how they get in. How do those guys work? So that is a huge, huge part of it.
For sure. Keith, we have a lot of Jaden Ivey clamor. This is from OG unnamed YouTube user. Does Keith have any Ivey situation thoughts? Fly Muck 321. 1+1 prove it for J.I. this offseason. And then the Wakandan dude, Keith, do you think the most likely option for the Pistons and Ivey is for Ivey to accept the restricted free agency qualifying offer, rehab his value, and get paid next year? So Ivey's situation, obviously, potential restricted free agent this summer. Just got to walk us through what you see there and what the options are for both sides.
Yeah, Jaden Ivey's an interesting one, right? Because it felt like a year ago we were like, all right, it's all coming together for him. Unfortunately, the broken leg, and then he just kind of now it feels like we're struggling to recapture that momentum a little bit. I still think Jaden Ivey's a good player, but I think a little bit too. I don't want to say in this way where the Pistons moved on as far as they're done with Jaden Ivey. I think it is the Pistons have moved on in the sense of we're okay now, right? Like we don't. If we were 2 years ago, it was the Pistons need Jaden Ivey to be a number 2, or they might not be anything ever. Now it's like, okay, we've figured out another path, right? So to that last question, yeah, I mean, it's qualifying offer. We'll see where it comes in. I don't know if he's going to meet starter criteria or not. We'll have to get into that. It's a later question. But right now, to be about $13 million, let's say Pistons make it, which I think they will, it might not be the worst path for Jaden Ivey. I don't think the restricted free agent offer sheet's going to come his way. That's just kind of died out over the years. Maybe there's a sign and trade possibility in place of an offer sheet that comes up. If it comes down to we're in a spot, Jaden Ivey could be next summer's Kuminga, Giddey, where we're into August, September, and we're talking about training camps coming up and the guy's still not signed because they don't know that the Pistons are going to be willing to jump in. Now, if Jaden Ivey's like, I'll take 4 years, $40 million, sure, but I don't think he's going to be because I think for him, I'd rather sign the 1 year qualifying offer, play it out, have a chance to play a real role on a good team, and then let people see what I can really do. That doesn't rule out something long-term with the Pistons, but I'll be an unrestricted free agent in 2027 and off I go then into, what might be a better opportunity. So qualifying offer, I would say, is in play, but we've got a long way to go between now and then.
And as mentioned, many people have mentioned, he is coming off a broken leg. That's not just a physical thing. There is also potential mental, like, I don't like to do this too much. I didn't play at this level. I played at a fairly high level. I played through an injury, with an injury, all of that. It does kind of mess with your head at times coming off that stuff. And every player is different, Keith. Every player is different. Some guys can just play through it and they just do it. Before we move on, and then we'll quick hit a bunch of names and questions. Jalen Duren. So Big Dog Pistons, how much is Duren getting? $40 million a year. I'm not going to give my thoughts here. And you don't even have to give what you would give him. What do you think his value is right now based off what we've seen through this portion of the season?
Yeah, I think that's about right. That feels good. The max projects to start at 41.5 for Jalen. I don't think he's going to make all NBA, so I don't think he would qualify for the 30%, but the 41.5, that feels a little rich, but if you could get him at like 35-ish, like it would be great for Detroit if you could get him on a deal that's either flat, where maybe you pay him a little bit more in the first year. I don't know that they need to structure it where it's ascending because they don't know that that's the position. I think you'd rather have a little bit more flexibility in the out years on that because you've already got Cunningham on a max, but that feels about the range for Jalen Duren. He might be an all-star this year. All-star centers get paid, really any all-star, but especially all-star big guys, they get paid. And that's one where I'm not super stressed about it if I give him 35. Even if they did go to the max, I'm not going to kill them for it. It feels a little rich. That'd be like, all right, that's okay. But, maybe I would have tried to go a touch lower. But yeah, if it's in the 35 million range, I think that's perfectly fine for him.
Okay, so back to this one. Are you wary of trading for a player during the best year of their career? So this was a Michael Porter Jr., I think, thing. And not even just saying like, hey, he's on the Nets, he's getting all this, but is there a little bit like, hey, we're seeing the best 3 months of this player's career and we're trading for them at their highest value or whatever?
Yeah, a little bit. So like this was when they came up with Nikola Vucevic last year.
Yeah.
When he was shooting it was like 45% from three and like 58% overall. My fear was that it will come back to earth. And if you trade for him and it comes back to earth, you're going to get killed by your fans because you're going to be like, why is he now shooting? He was at 45% from three and now he's shooting 30%. Or on the year, it's like 40% from three and it's pretty good, but you're going to get beat up by people because it's like, hey, what happened here? What did we trade for? So that part I worry about a little bit. But Michael Porter Jr. he's always been really efficient. Now, I mean, I'm not going to, maybe you, Bryce, could be efficient playing with Jokic. I was going to say I could be, that's going a little too far. But you could actually play. So that would probably be all right. Omari, you're probably better than I am too. So you might be able to get a few buckets playing with Jokic, but it's easy to be efficient with Jokic, right? Like you're probably going to be, but that has continued. He's been really efficient with the Nets. And what's changed is now the efficiency's paired with higher volume. He's taking way more shots than ever from three. He's taking more shots, period. He's getting to the line more because he is a primary option. Again, as long as he could scale that back a little, he doesn't have to scale it back to his Denver role, but that's where a guy like Porter, yeah. But if it is completely out of nowhere production, I am a little bit wary of that, especially if it's a guy also going into any kind of contract type situation. Then I'm really nervous because that gets really tough if all of a sudden there's a drop off.
Let's get into two pretty big names here. This is from Basketball XTR. Keith, what do you think about going after Larry Markkinen or Jaren Jackson Jr. for upgrade at power forward?
Yeah, I like it. I don't dislike the idea of either guy. It's just going to cost a lot. This is your all-in move, and you better be certain you're getting it right. With that, this is, I don't want to say your last big move, but it's really close because to get Markkinen, I mean, the Jazz have very much set a bar on him of we need multiple first-round picks. I mean, you're talking probably 3 with swaps, maybe even 4 with swaps. And that's it, right? That's all your draft capital that's going out the door. With Jaren Jackson Jr. might be a little bit less, but Memphis is sending signals that whether they trade John Morant today or not, or by the deadline or not, it sounds like we're at the end of John Morant's time in Memphis, at least by the offseason. And if their signals are whether we keep John or not, we want to keep Jaren Jackson Jr. When a team says that means you have to bowl him over. So you're probably looking at a pretty similar type offer. So I don't hate the idea. It's just you better be right. Because if you get this wrong, this is the kind of thing that now all of a sudden, instead of ever making a finals run or even an East finals run, you're stuck as like a second round team for the next 3 years while the contracts kind of play themselves out.
Real quick, so Hotline Bling is a good song. Y'all want to see Duncan Robinson and Sam Hauser share a court. So I think the idea is they would alternate being on the court and you always have a real floor spacer. The other part of it, the perspective I want to get from you, Keith, 2 parts. One, what is Sam Hauser's defense? Because I think sometimes these guys get pigeonholed into they're the worst defenders in the NBA. They can't guard anybody. They don't do this. They don't do that. That might be the case, but you watch him as much as anybody on this podcast. That portion. And then also do you think the Celtics are even going this way? The whole idea is ducking the tax but they've been pretty good. It takes 2 years to reset the repeater tax. I'm kind of like, are we sure they're going to try to get underneath it? So just kind of hash out all of that. Sam Hauser's defense. And then is he actually even going to be on the market?
One, I get a pause and be like, Bryce casually throws in, it takes 2 years to reset the repeater. I'm so proud of you, man. Like, this guy was like, look, I don't know. When we first met, you're like, I don't know anything about the cap. It's not what I do. It's not what I want to do. And now he's just like, hey, to reset the repeater, it takes 2 years. I'll just drop that in there. So good job, my man. Sam Hauser is tagged with every single white perimeter player ever that they're just not a good defender, right? Like I'm not trying to make a thing. It's just what happens. In the Bryce, I'm sure you went through it in your life too.
Except I was actually a bad defender. Like the problem for me is all of that rang true whenever you watch me play basketball.
When it sticks, then it never goes away.
That's correct.
Right? But Tim Hauser is by no means challenging for an all defense team. So if people think of him and Duncan Robinson, fair comparison, right? They're similarly sized guys whose primary value is shooting. Sam Hauser is a playable defensive player where Duncan Robinson at times can be not very good. I said it at the beginning of the show. It's a real surprise Pistons have crafted this good of a defense with Duncan Robinson playing such a big role because he's just not a good defender. Guys challenge Sam Hauser all the time. And there's times when they're like, wait, like you couldn't move this guy. He's pretty strong. You put him on the quickest guards in the league. Yeah, he doesn't have a chance, right? But you put him on most forward sized players, especially guys who think they're going to body him up. He's pretty strong. He doesn't move. He's really smart about shading his guy into where his help is with that. And he has very quick hands. So that means he gets a lot of strips. He'll get some blocks that guys don't expect. He's pretty good in the Celtics system as far as the Celtics over the last couple of years have done a lot more lock and trail in pick and roll coverage, which essentially means you don't straight switch while they're hedging. You follow your guy. I'm oversimplifying it, but you follow your man, and he gets a lot of backside blocks that way on those plays. So him and Duncan Robinson on a court together, yeah, probably not, right? It would probably be more, here's a 24-minute split almost with that. But Hauser is, a good player. Here's the thing though. I don't think the Celtics are going to move him. It's not that he's untouchable. There was a point earlier this year where you could have said, there it is. There's your move to get out of the tax and everything else. They've played so good now that Brad Stevens, this was probably about 2 weeks ago now, said, we have no mandate to cut salary. We are good where we are. We don't need to get under the tax line. We are, we had to get under the second apron because there's real penalties as far as frozen draft picks and picks getting moved to the end of the round and all that. That had to happen. But the Celtics are now in a position where we don't need to get under the first apron because just getting under the first apron doesn't do anything for you, really. There's a few more things you can do, but you're not going to do those things anyway because now you've already done your move to get under. And then under the tax line, if there's a move that makes sense and gets them under the tax, they will do it. But they're no longer in a position where it is, let's just get off money to do that because of how well they've played.
From Marco Rolo, 4726, Bobby Portis would fit perfect as a Piston. So Portis was among the names I put in the trade exception story. Not to say that, he's a definite option, but just to illustrate what's possible. But obviously Milwaukee's in an interesting position. Just thoughts on Bobby Portis and the potential for a fit there.
I love the fit. And at some point, how much are we going to amp up the crazy on the team? If we're, especially if let's just say Bobby Portis went into the trade exception without a meaningful rotation player going out. I can't even imagine going against him, Stewart, and Holland on the second line. It could be the biggest guy in the league. And I'm like, I'm just going to hang out at the perimeter because I just don't want to do it, with that. So, but yeah, the fit's pretty solid. I do think we focus a lot, at least I do, on adding more shooting because that's definitely a need, adding another playmaker, but I think they could use another big. When it comes down to it, they play two bigs. They play Dern and Stewart. Harris does okay at the 4. Paul Reed gets in the mix occasionally. But if you could add one more 4-5 player like Portis has been, I think you're in pretty good shape because now you can build your 3 big rotation that way.
So another name that I think is interesting and a team that I think is very fascinating at the deadline because they're so bad this year, but also have some holes on the roster, one glaring one, and are bringing back an All-NBA player next year. What are your thoughts on Obi Toppin in the same realm of an idea?
Yeah, I like the idea. The challenge is he's hurt. We have no idea when he's going to be back. And it doesn't sound like some people have suggested the Pacers they stink and they're tanking and they're not holding out healthy guys like that. It might be a game here and there. He's been out for a month or more now. If you felt like, oh yeah, he'll be back and then we feel good that he'll stay on the court for the rest of the run. Sure, I don't mind the idea of Toppin. He's a pretty good player, but I'll tell you, Indiana, you're not going to steal him Indiana's going to want something real. Pacers' intention is much like we all said, Pacers and Celtics are going to take a gap year, right? And that's going to be what it is. Well, the Pacers are. The Celtics did not. And the Pacers also, to be fair to them, it's not just Halliburton. They got buried under a ton of other injuries that made it almost impossible for them. But their intention next year is to be right back at it, right back in finals contention. And Obi Toppin's a big part of that for them.
For sure. Last 2 firsts from Big Dog Pistons. Is 3 firsts too much for Trey Murphy?
This seems like
That's
the line. This seems like the line. Like, it's like,
that's the line.
If it's 2 firsts, I think I'm in. If it's his contract's so good, Keith, which is what I always go back to, that makes this hard.
And it's like, wow. And I think that also lessens the incentive for them to trade him because he's on such a good deal and still pretty young.
Yeah, that's it. That's why I didn't love the idea of them putting out through the media the other day, like, we're not trading any of Zion or Murphy or Jones or Queen and Fears. I don't even know why we're in they needed to say it. Like, of course you're not moving them. I like the Murphy Jones part of that was stop calling with bad offers, right? Like you better make real offers. Zion, let's have a different conversation. Like, let's be a lot more open to that idea. If you're the Pelicans, I would say, here's how I'm going to split the difference. I would do 2 in a protected, 2 in like lottery protected, with the last one being lottery protected, where if everything goes sideways and it all falls apart on us, let's go 2 in a protected. I would do two unprotected, and no swaps if I'm doing that. Or if they're like 2 in a swap, all right, I'm open to that idea. Because here's the reality. If I'm Detroit thinking I'm giving up picks that are all 25 or later, right? Like they're going to be 25 or later in each of the next 3 rounds. And yeah, I want to be able to have stuff to backfill as some other guys move along, but I've kind of got my core in place. So that's has to be part of the equation as well. You're not acquiring a guy who might just walk away.
MBWell says, what are the dynamics of the exception policy? Guys, we covered that for probably 15 minutes. So if you're joining us late, like, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just saying, go back to the around 30-minute mark of the podcast, and you're going to get like the most detailed version, nerdy, and with all due respect to us, breakdown of how a trade exception works. Okay, we did get a super chat here. Thank you so much from Christopher. Chances that Cade gets some all defensive team votes? I would guess not. My biggest thing is even though they're second in defense, I think Asar and Stu are going to get all of that attention. And honestly, I think Ron Holland would start to get some of that attention even before Cade. I've said this multiple times. We did it on Game Theory the other day. Cade is a real defender for a primary option. I don't think he's that level of defender. I do want to ask you this real quick, Keith. Like, is he first team all NBA, you think, right now? Like, is he top 5?
Yeah, I mean, it's so wonky now with
because of the
eligibility stuff. But if he finishes first team NBA, I'm not really going to be like, oh God, what happened here? He might get squeezed if somebody ends up eligible that we don't expect to, but he's right there. Like, it's, second at worst for him. Yeah, I have no issues with that at all. Because when you are all credit to the other Pistons, when you are the driving factor for a first place team, that has to be a consideration. And in that vein, he's going to be on MVP ballots too. Like, it's going to be there. To the all defense thing, you're absolutely right. Nobody gets 3 guys getting votes for all defense unless you are like the Thunder this year, which are historically good defense. The Pistons are good defense, but they're not there. So those will go to Thompson and Stewart.
Real quick, Christopher, thank you so much for the super chat, though. We really appreciate it. Okay, truly last one here, Keith, and then we'll get you out, let you get on with your Sunday. Lots of playoff football today.
Hey, there's like NBA hoops on today, too.
There are NBA hoops.
The football, until the Patriots start for me, the football will be on the second screen, and I'll be watching the NBA.
I love it. This is my first weekend in a while of playoffs where it's like, this is stress-free. I'm just watching and enjoying football. Keith, have you seen an uptick in interest in the Pistons nationally? So you do a national podcast. You contribute to a national website that everybody should be using. That's where I go whenever I want to do a trade or whatever. You see these things on the trade machine. You see the questions that come in and all of that over on the front. You have a national presence. Do you think that there has been more attention to the Pistons?
Yeah, absolutely. I can also tell you when I do radio in other markets, I'll get asked Pistons questions now. And it's not just the like last year started to get some of those because like, what happened here? Right? Like, it was like, this was like arguably one of the worst teams in NBA history 2 years ago. And now all of a sudden this is a playoff team. You know, there was a little bit, but this year there'll be like legit, like, Pistons questions as far, yeah, there we go. I love that. There'll be questions like, what should they do? And like I do a weekly a standing radio hit in the Memphis market, and I get asked Pistons out of nowhere the other day that I wasn't really expecting, because it's usually, when you guys know, you do it and it's home team focused, and then you get into other stuff. I mean, it was, yeah, the Pistons were one of them there, but yeah, I mean, and we have a couple really dedicated Pistons fans who are in our show all the time, you know, which is great. Like we love seeing them when they pop in, with us. So we have a great time, with those guys. But what's been funny is it's like I started at the beginning. They used to pop in with like, please give me something, some level of hope, like some reason to care, like some reason to love again. And now it's like, hey, should we do this? And it's really cool. I think Detroit they're one of those NBA fan bases where it's really smart fans. And when the team's not good, it's not that they don't care. They just get super frustrated. And it's like, for so long, it was like, what are we doing here? And they were one of the proud franchises in the NBA for a very long time too. And now I think it's back to like, let's go. And I think the budding Pistons-Knicks rivalry is fantastic. I love that. You know, they go at it back and forth, because I think that's really good. You know, the league is best when, you know, we're in a spot where teams, you know, kind of get into it. And how we get into it is you got to have some playoff battles, right? Like that's when you develop a very healthy and dislike for the other side, right? That's where you get there. So yeah, I think they're, you know, I think, yeah, definitely, they're, you know, on a national level. We're still not quite there yet. And like, you know, it's still, I mean, some teams can be bad and they're still going to get their games. I mean, the Knicks played on Christmas for decades when they weren't good. The Lakers were horrible and were in the night slot every night for years. But the Pistons are making their way. So I think it's really good.
All right, Keith, as we let you go here, let people know where they can find you on socials, obviously Spot Track, NBA Front Office Show, all of that.
Yeah, you can find me at Keith Smith NBA on Twitter or Blue Sky. Trying to be active on both as much as I can be. With that, you can find all my written work on spottrack.com. That we've got up right now because 10-day contracts started with this past week. So there's stuff up there about 10-day call-up guys to watch. I did a whole thing on guarantees. With that, I'll have over the next coming weeks leading into the trade deadline, I will have trade value pieces coming up, best value, worst value things, a whole trade primer. It'll be broken up east and west. With that, we're just kind of breaking down what the teams are doing. And then if you like a lot of what we got into here, roster stuff and all that, NBA Front Office Show with Trevor Lane and I, we talk all the latest news and notes around the league. I recommend subscribe and turn on your notifications, because if a trade goes down, as quick as we can get to the mics, we get to the mics and break it down. If it's a salary dump for a second round pick, no, we're not going live for that. But if it's a semi-big trade, we will get on the mics and go live for it. We have a lot of fun with those, with that. And then I have reaction pieces for every single trade. And those, I will have reaction pieces up on Spot Track if it's a second round salary dump type thing, because just that's what we do. But yeah, all that's where you can find all my work.
Keith, you're the GOAT, man. Thank you so much for joining us and providing this very, very informative trade deadline breakdown. With that said, I will close this out. Big thanks to our audio producer, Robin Chan, our editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery Nichols, and big shout out to West Davenport, as always, and we'll talk to you all next week.